Okay, I think JD has just joined, and you might need to confirm to us that your audio is that you can hear. Okay, great. So you've joined with your audio. So that's beautiful. So let's go on. Let's start. Now, one of the first things that I learned in Python programming is that when you want to start programming in Python, it is best for you to understand object-oriented programming. Why? Because everything in Python is an object. The modules, practically everything in Python is an object, all right? So just a second, let me share my screen. All right, so okay. So like I was saying, everything in Python is an object. And if you really want to enjoy your Python journey, one of the first concepts you must learn is object-oriented programming. And the reason is simple. Python is controlled by an organization called the Python Foundation. And one of the reasons why we are all happy with Python is because the Python Foundation is actually, they have a set of rules, all right, called the PEPs. I'm trying to remember the full meaning of that name right now, but those PEPs, what they do is they help set like a guide, all right, of what good code practice should look like. That's one. And then the Python Foundation also ensures that when anybody creates a module, it sticks to, if you allow me to use the word, Pythonic way of doing things. So if there were no Python Foundation, trust me, nobody would want to use Python. The reason is simple, because everything would just be a mess. I could decide that, you know what, I want to come up with my module with procedural programming. Somebody might say, you know what, I want to design my module with functional programming. Another person might say, you know what, I want to design. So if everybody does what they think they want, then nobody can learn Python. But because Python Foundation tries to harmonize the coding practices, what happens is that everybody that wants to build a module right now, whether you want to build pandas, numpy, matplotlib, or whatever it is, you want to build, whatever name you want to call your module, you must build it in such a way that is made up of classes, attributes, and methods, so that when somebody picks, for example, the documentation, and that's one of the things you should begin to do naturally, you know, as you grow in your practice of coding, you should once in a while just try to reach out and read documentation. So I like to read documentation a lot. And the reason is simple. When I read documentation, I see things. Now, documentation can be very, very tedious to read, trust me. It could be tedious, but the documentation is from the Python Foundation. So what it does is it just lets me know everything about that module. For example, now this is one of the modules we're going to be looking at, the OS module. All right. This documentation captures everything about the OS module. It captures all the attributes, all right, the properties, if you like. It captures the methods. It captures everything about it. So if you can just read this, digest it, and understand it, you're good with this module. Anything you're trying to do with this module will just be very easy for you. The wahala there, or the problem there, would be you just reading this and trying to understand it in the first place. All right. So that's how these things work. Now, so what we do basically is, like I told you when we were starting the session many months back, when we began the bootcamp, we talked about Python libraries or Python modules. What is a Python module? A Python module is just pre-written code that prevents you from writing your own code. All right, it's just pre-written code that prevents you from writing your own code. So let me just give an example. I probably would use Excel to give this example. Maybe it would make the example as clear as possible. All right, so let me just use Excel for this example, because many times for those of us who love Excel and who are Excel users, one of the reasons why we like Excel is because Excel already has pre-written functions. So we see sum, we see average, we see multiply, and all of that. You see all those functions that are pre-written in Excel? Those are libraries. Those are libraries. And what they do is that they prevent you from having to, having to rewrite your own function. Because just imagine that for every time you want to write, you want to do 1 plus 1, you have to write the sum function from the scratch. What will happen is that you get very bored of data processing, you get very bored of programming. Just imagine you want to do 1 plus 1, right? Just a second. Sorry, so this one is 1, and this one is another 1. Now you want to get the sum. Most times you just write this and then you get this. All right. So why we love Excel is because they've pre-written the sum function for us. They've pre-written the average functions for us. They've done everything. And that's the same way Python is. Python's libraries are pre-written. We have a lot of pre-written libraries in Python that help to make work easy. So what you need to do is you pick a library that you like to use. You try to understand what are the objects that I can create from this library, and then what are the methods in this library that is available to us. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to just start from the scratch, all right, when we talk about automation. And what I want you to also do is, please, this is a live class. If there's anything I do that you don't understand, feel free to raise your hand, unmute yourself and ask a question, or type it in the chat. I always monitor the chats so that I could respond to you in time, all right? So when we talk about Python automation, what we are trying to gain is this. We are trying to write Python code that can do any of these 4 things. Usually, most times, this is what we want to do. We either want to manipulate a whole file, like a directory or something, and move one file from one file to another, or move from one folder. And most times when we call these things folders, they tend to sound somehow, but actually, they're actually called directories. But you're forgiven if you call them folders. Okay, so that's one of the major things you want to automate. So most people want to automate their workflow in such a way that when somebody sends me, or maybe when maybe you download invoices a lot, or you download, or maybe they send you documents a lot or something. So for example, if you download, maybe you have 10 customers, all right? And anytime they send in their customer request, the system you use saves it with the customer name and the extension. So maybe the first customer is Pfizer. So your ERP or whatever you use probably just saves the documents as Pfizer.csv or Pfizer.xls. Sorry. So that way it makes it easier for you. You might just want to automate it in such a way that anytime you download a report from your ERP or whatever software you use in your office, the moment it hits your download file, there is a sweep from that your download file straight up to the file that has that customer name. So you can do that. You can also use a Python automation to modify the contents of a file or a directory without even having to explicitly open that file. So you can decide to say, you know what, I want to change the name of this file. For example, if you look at my desktop right now, you'll see a file called PyAuthorNew. If I want to change this file name now, what I'll do is I probably will right click and click on rename and all of that, all right? But if I don't want to go that route because maybe I have plenty of files, or I have or I'm just short of time, I could just automate it away in such a way that anytime I you know, run that file, then what happens is it automatically just, you know, changes the file name or does whatever it is that I want it to do. Then the third thing that most people do with Python automation is probably want to get information from a web page. And now when I say web page, that includes your email address, because you open your email in a browser. So when you open anything that happens in a web browser, basically, because for you to run, okay, I see a question. All right, okay, cool. So anything that happens in the web browser basically is HTML driven. So most times you want to maybe get something from a web page, write something from a web page to another file or something. So this includes maybe you want to check your email automatically, or you want to download some particular stuff from your email, forward it to another email, or whatever it is you want to automate. Sometimes, like for me, usually one of the first things I do, or I used to do, I had to stop that because it was becoming a bad habit. But one of the first things I used to do earlier on was when I wake up, I pick my phone and I just check through the news, especially for the past day, because I just want to catch up with what's happening, you know. So I could automate that away. I could just write a script, a Python program that would every morning once I run it, it will just aggregate all the headlines from all the major news sources that I like. And when it aggregates that, it just aggregates their headlines, so that I just look at the headlines that I want and I just click on the one that I want to read, you know, without having to scroll through all the, you know, from website to website, maybe from CNN to BBC, then to all the other newspapers, you know, Washington Post and all of that. So if I want to automate that, I can do that. All right. Then the new part of automation that people have now started gradually embracing, not like it's been here a while, all right, not like it's really new, but what has happened is that because a lot of modules and stuff have started coming up, you know, and a lot of other things have started happening around this, people have now started to embrace it more. So it's called event-based programming, or asynchronous or hands-free programming. What it does is this: it listens. When you write that script and you run it, Python activates and just waits for an event to happen. So once that event happens, it starts the chain of events that you have written in that program. So for example, you might want to say, okay, when I receive a mail, Python, I want you to look at that mail. If the subject of that mail is inquiry, download the mail, send a copy to so and so person's email, and stuff like that. But all that will begin not because you wanted to start it. It will begin by an event that just happened, even without you knowing. You might be sleeping and the email just hits your inbox and the process just runs automatically, you know, without you doing anything about it. So that's one of the new things people have started embracing now, especially it has become rampant, especially because of the growth of IoT, that's Internet of Things, and a couple of other things and lifestyle changes that we have all been making. So every automation you want to do will fall into this four, all right? And like I said, as usual, one of the things Python does is that Python tries to have as many modules as possible that can help, you know, ease this process of creating things or automating things. So we're going to look at about 8 or 9 of these modules in this series. This is going to be a series. We're going to run it for probably like 5 to 6 Saturdays. You know, trust me, it's not something that we can cover in one day, because if we just try to cover it in one day, you will not get the basics. But like I always want to do, I always want to ensure that we have the basics so that At any point in time when you're called on, once you remember the basics, you're good, all right? So the first module we're going to be looking at is the OS module and the SH util module. And then we'll look at the sys module also today. And then subsequently, the next time we meet, we will look at the watchdog module. In fact, the watchdog module is one of Python's most useful modules for asynchronous programming, because like it says, a watchdog. So it's just watching for an event to happen. The moment that event happens, Python just activates. So the moment you set up that watchdog, then it starts watching. Once the event happens, it sets all the other programs in motion, and it runs what you want it to run. The SMTP library module is for email. All right, that's the module you use to control your emails and all that. Then the time and date time modules are modules you use to add some form of flexibility to your program. So sometimes you might need there to be a space in between one part of the program and the other part of the program, especially because, for example, okay, let's say I want to automate when a file is downloaded from my email. I want to automate it in such a way that when it hits my email, I download it, then move it to another file. Now, if you don't use the timing module, that's the time module in Python, to do anything, if you don't use that in this scenario, what will happen is that everything will try to run the way you did it. So the moment the email comes in, the Python starts running and starts downloading. But the problem is this: what if the file is a bit large and it takes maybe like 2 minutes to download? By then, your other parts of the program might have run and thrown up an exception if you did not put an exception handler or something, and the automation will fail. But some other times, what could happen is that if you use the timer, you could say, okay, on the average, the files that come in, maybe like 5 MB, 6 MB or whatever. All right. Now, anytime if I set it in such a way that when I try to download, I would need, like, say 30 seconds or 1 minute, in between the download and the other steps in the program. Automatically, Python says, okay, no problem. So the moment it begins the first stage, which is to download, it will wait for the time you set there, maybe like 10 seconds, 30 seconds, 1 minute, 30 minutes, depending on what you've set there, before it goes into the next part of the flow. All right. So that's why that time module is very, very important. And it's really an important part of every automation you're going to do. Okay, so the next module is the request module. The request module is just simple. It helps you retrieve information from websites, all right? So when you, for example, want to, maybe like me, automate when you wake up in the morning, you just, scrape the web for news headlines, probably dump it into one place. That request module is what will help you target all those news websites that you want to scrape from. All right. And then the Beautiful Soup module is a web scraping module. So what it does is, when you use the request module to pull information, to pull the website, all right, the Beautiful Soup module now scrapes that website you've used the request module to pull, all right, and then returns whatever it is you want it to return. That's what happens, when you use the Beautiful Soup module. So most times you would notice that the request module and the Beautiful Soup module goes together. Now, Python has another module called the URL lib module, but I really do not like it. I prefer the request module, because it's straightforward. Just import requests from requests, do this, whatever you want. It's just straightforward. All right, but the URL lib 3, I think that's the name, is not as easy to use, like user-friendly as the request module. It's not like the difference is much, but it's just like syntax, So I just like the simplicity of the request module. Same for the Beautiful Soup module. There are other modules that you could use to scrape the web. There is Scrapey. There is, I'm not remember the other one's name right now, but Beautiful Soup is like one of the most accessible. All right, so it's just straightforward. So when we learn all of these modules, that's this modules A to G that we have here, what it will do is it will help us become better rounded and better prepared to handle all these 4 dimensions of automation. And trust me, sometimes it looks like what you want to do is easy. But by the time you start writing code, you now get to understand, okay, there is a lot of logic, that I have to deploy to get what I want done. All right, so let's look at the first one, the OS module. What the OS module basically does is that it allows you to interact with the file or directories. Like I told you earlier, the directory is basically like a folder. Folders are just destinations, all right, where you put in files. So that's basically what the OS module does. The OS module just allows you to interact with files, directories. And what are the usual operations you want to run on a file or directory? Probably want to create a new file. All right, so like I said, you might want to, on receipt of a mail, download this file that's inside the mail, forward it into a new folder, or stuff like that. So you will need to learn how to use the OS module to refer to directories and files. You could also want to change the name of the file. All right, so probably if you download, or if you do, maybe you have a lot of documents or something in a folder, all right, or in a directory, if you like, and you want to change their names, you can just put their names in a notepad or in an Excel document, and then write a for loop that, okay, for all the files in this with these names, change their names to this, and that will be it. In just one click, Python will run all of that and just change the file or folder names, whichever one you prefer, to what it is you want. Okay, so you might need to use it to add a new file or a subdirectory, and you might need to move a file from one place to the other. So those are basically the kind of operations that will run on files or folders, and that's the whole thing in the system. Every part of the system that you can interact with is just made up of files and folders, really. All right. Even, for example, the application Microsoft Excel is, domiciled in a directory. For us to open it, we have to go to a directory. So when you double click, or when you click on that thing on the screen, what you're actually doing is pointing your app to the directory. And that's one of the ways you'll know all that is, for example, you can take this Visual Studio, all right click on it and check for properties. And when you click on that, you would see the directory where it is, all right? So you would always see that everything is in the directory. So this is the directory. This is the file name in the directory that starts up this Visual Studio Code. So if I want to automate this away, maybe I want to run a program that the moment I put on my laptop, it kicks on Visual Studio or whatever. These are the 2 things I'm going to target. I'm going to target this, file path and this directory. All right, so let's look at how we do some of these things in Python. I'm going to make this notebook available to everyone as usual in our collab. So if you do not see that in the collab, maybe what you should do is, okay, you know what, I think, because I don't want to distract the session, I would post the collab on the Slack. But if you're not on the Slack, I probably would post it on Telegram or one other, or any other of our, social media channels, all right? So, but you will get the Slack, the link to the collab. If you're actually on our Slack, you'd see that it's just pinned on the Slack. So Because I want to use these three modules right now, the OS module and the shuttle module. Okay, so let me just talk a bit about the shuttle module because it's almost like the OS module, but while the OS module is directed to files, all right, and directories, the SH util module, SH actually, I think, means system high level utility module, because that's how the documentation described it. So this is it. It says it is high level file operations. So that's basically what I think the SH means, system high level utility. What it does is it tries to it tries to help you reach into system utilities on a high level, files basically. So high level means it helps you do all those mundane operations like copy, paste, cut, move, and all of that. So that's what you use this one to do. This one, the OS module, you use that for some more in-depth, system work. All right. And then the sys module is the module that you can use to find out about your Python environment. Remember, the OS module is for your files and directories. The SH util is for high-level file operations, and then the system module, that's the sys module, is the module that helps you do stuff with your Python installation. For example, I may want to write my file or my program, my automation program in such a way that when I click on this program and I run it, it will go wake up another Python script that I've written, and do something to that. I can achieve that using the sys module. There are a lot of things that you can do, but the moment you want to talk to your Python installation, either you want to call a Python script or you want to reach into a variable or you want to change something, especially for a Linux or Unix user, you want to do something to your Python installation to change the way it brings stuff up, then you're good to go. All right. For those of you who use Windows, you're okay. You don't have any problems. Python in Windows is customized to the hilt. You're good. But for Linux and Unix, there are still a lot of things you need to do. Personally, I know Linux is open source, but I really do not like Linux. Now, I know some people are going to come for me because of what I'm saying, but I find Windows easier to use. Maybe because I've been using Windows all my life since I started computing, So, but I have told myself much later, maybe later this year or early next year, I'm going to try my hands on Linux and then just see some things for myself. All right. So,
yeah.
Okay, so go ahead. Go ahead.
I just want to say about that. Like I was in the same situation as well, but unfortunately, I got one open source code, and I need to deploy the platform. So I was not able to do it until I had to port to Linux. So sometimes it has its own benefit as well.
Yeah,
yeah,
that's right. That's right. Okay, so as usual, when you want to use any of this stuff, any of the modules in Python, you have to import them. So I'm just going to, that's what I did here. I've imported the OS module, I've imported the shuttle module, and the sys module, all right? So I'm just going to click on that to run it. So the first thing we're going to try to do, okay, let me just delete this stuff here. All right. So the first thing we're going to try to do right now is to create a new directory. Okay, so let me just remove this. Create a new directory. All right. So if we want to do this, we need to tell Python what location it should create the new directory. Remember, I told you directory and folder are basically the same thing. All right. So one of the things you would need to learn is how to, especially when you get to this point where you want to start, talking to your OS. One of the first things that I had to learn was how not to be afraid, because I used to get scared. Oh, what if I break something? That's the whole plan. Break something. You can't know if, you can't know how to repair something until you start breaking things, right? So My first rule of programming is do not be afraid to break things. When you break it, you get to learn some ways that things do not work, and then you get to fix that stuff. So there are two ways that you can create a directory. So let's assume if you look at my desktop right now, you'll notice that there is no folder called PyAuto, or let me use the word directory since we've started using that. But if I use the word directory here, just know I'm talking about a folder, all right, or a location on your system. So if you look at my desktop, you'll notice that there is no folder called PyAuto. So I just want to create that right now, all right? And I will assign that PyAuto to a variable called path. Now, don't worry about this R you see here. This R is just regex that makes this thing to convert to a raw file. If not, I will have to be putting double forward slashes here, all right? So that, because if I leave it at just one slash, by the time the interpreter wants to read this, it's going to think I'm trying to escape. So it's not going to read it together as a path. That's why I put this as this R here. Either I put the R there or I double the slashes, all right? So that even if the system uses the first slash to escape, the second one is to join it to the text, okay? So when I do this, I use this command called os.make directory. So there are two, let me see. There are two ways you can use this make directory command. If you want to make a single directory, the option is mkdir. That's what you have here. All right. So that's this mkdir. But if you want to make a file, or sorry, a folder and subfolders inside that folder, it means you want to make directories, plenty of them at once. All right. So use make theirs. Okay, so let me use this first one, make there, all right? And when you put this make there, if you're using a notebook, like the one I'm using right now, and you press Shift Tab, it will bring out the doc string of that function. So this is what it's expecting from us. Make there is expecting a path. A path is this path that we just stated right now, where we want to create the file, all right? Then the mode by default is 511, all right, which I do not know what that means and I didn't bother to check. All right, and then the DRIFD, all right, is set to default as none. That's the file descriptor, all right? So usually the default for file descriptor is none. But right now, if I just put only the path and I don't specify these two, they'll just default to these values, which is fine. So I'm just going to specify that the path that I want is this path variable that I declared here, so that the system will just go to this place, and create this path for me. So I'll press enter. Now, if I go to my desktop, you'll notice that the system has created a folder called PyAuto, all right? And if you look inside, it's blank, it's blank. So this is the directory, if you like. You could just, let me see, pull it down a bit. Yeah. So you'll see the directory there, the address, where you pull it down. Okay. So lest I forget, if you notice all the notebooks that I'm using they all have user/ugo. That's my directory. So when you want to run it, if you run it like this, you're going to have an error. You have to find your own system directory and then, use it to arrive at what it is you want to arrive at. A simple way is I prefer to use my desktop so that I can see what I'm doing. So usually what I'll do is I'm going to go to new and create a folder, right? Just a new folder. And then you can click on properties, all right? And where is that? Let's see. Okay, no, that option is not here. But basically, you can double click here, all right? And just click on this down button. You'd see your desktop directory and you just copy that first part, which is what you need. All right. So that's how you can just quickly get the directory. Okay, so I have created a directory called PyAuto, but now I want to create another directory called PyAutoNew, and I want to create a subfolder inside called 2014. All right. So I'll create this now and assign it to this new variable called path2. Okay, and remember, because I'm making folder and subfolders, two directories inside one, I will have to use make theirs instead of make there that I used here. So when I run this, if I go to my desktop, you see that a new folder has been created called PyAutoNew. All right. Now, if I just double click on this, you'll see that it has a subfolder called 2014, just like we wanted it, and the folder is empty. Okay. So then let me go back to my notebook. Now, if I want to remove a directory, that means I want to delete it, okay? I would use this os.rmdir, that's to remove a directory. Obviously, by looking at the two, you know that this one is when you want to remove a directory that has no subdirectory inside, like this one now that we did first that has no subfolders inside. We'll use rmdir, all right? But this other one that has subfolders on the inside, we'll use remove theirs, okay? So, yeah, so that's how it is, all right? Now, when I run this one, you would notice that it has deleted that first one, PyAuto for me, okay? Now, I'm going to run this second one now, this one here, and you will also notice that one is gone with everything on the inside. Okay, so that's how you delete. So you can automate a script. You can just write a script that targets a particular directory, you know, deletes a file inside or even deletes the whole directory, depending on what you want to do. You can always do that. Now, another thing you might want to do is you might want to create a new file. Okay, so if you want to create a new file, one of the things you can do is, okay, let me just create this one here. Now, if I put this os.getCwd, that CWD there is to get the current working directory. This is like the default directory that Python is going to, you know, that Python is going to save whatever it is you're doing into, all right? So if I put in this method and I run it, it will tell me my default directory is C users ugo. And that's what it is, because if you look at, just a second, if you look at this, let me go to my C, and go to my users, which is this, and ugo. This is where practically all my installations are, my Python installation, my VS Code, everything, all the stuff that I use. So even my Spider, my Jupyter Notebook, this is where the installation is. So when I want to run stuff, by default, the notebook or whatever I'm using, all right, would show that directory where it's installed and as the current working directory. Now, if I do not change this current working directory, anything that I'm doing will land there. So if I create a new folder, it lands in there. If I create a new directory, it lands in there. If I create a new file, it lands in there. Anything I do will land in this C users.ugo that I have here. And it's okay if that is what you want to do, all right? But like I said, for me, most times, because for monitoring sake, anytime I want to run a script, I like to use my desktop because it helps me with visibility, all right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this working directory, all right? And to change the working directory, all I need to do is to use this os.change directory function, which is this dir, all right? That's change directory. And when I put this in bracket and I run the docstring by shift tab, It tells me the only thing it requires from me is the path that I want it to change to. All right. So I'm just going to come here and then tell it to change directory to this. All right. So let me put this. I didn't bother naming it as a variable this time. All right. So I'm just going to press enter. Okay. So now when I do that, it's going to give me an error. And the error it's giving me is that the path is not found, which because I deleted it when I did this one. So let me create that path again. That's this one, this pi auto near, and yeah, so it's back here right now. Okay, so yeah, so it's back here. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to go back to my code, and then I'm now going to run this again. So yeah, so right now, this is my current working directory. So if I decide to write os.get the current working directory, and I run it, you can see now the current working directory has changed from where it is to this one. And if you also notice, you'd see that Python is using those double slashes that I told you about. Yeah, so that's the thing. If you don't want to use that R, the raw string, that's regex that changes your stuff to a raw string, you can just use these double slashes. Okay, so this is now my current working directory. Now, the next thing I want to do is, like I said, I want to create a file, but I want to create it on the desktop inside this 2014 folder. Remember, I had it for 2014 folder inside. So what I'm now going to do is, I am now going to use a Python built-in function called open. What this open function does is that it helps you write to a file or create a file or append a file or delete a file. All right. So that's one of the things you can do with this open function. You can use it to just target a particular file. But it's a built-in function in Python. And as always, every built-in function in Python starts with the word, you know. So open, then you put in the arguments that you want. So if I run the docstring for this one, you'd see all the arguments or the parameters that this open requires. It requires the file, it requires the mode, it requires some other parameters there, all right? And if you scroll down, you'll see the explanation of all the parameters. You will also see all of this, okay? So the mode, R for reading, which is the default mode. W is for writing. X is for also create a new file and open it for writing. A is for appending. I'm just going to display all of those shortly. All right, I just wanted to show you how they work. Okay, so now I'm going to say open. All right, but let me just use a notepad document. So let me call this file my Python, all right? .txt. TXT is a notepad document. So I probably, if I use maybe, let me see. If I use Excel SX, all right, and I run this, let's see. Okay, no such file or directory. Okay, yeah, because it doesn't exist. So let me create it. Let me see. Okay, great. So if I go to that, my 2014 folder right now, and I open it, you will notice that it has created an Excel sheet for me with the file name mypy, just waiting for me to do what I want to do with the Excel sheets. So I'm just going to delete this. And you see, it's telling me I cannot delete it. Why? Because the file is open in Python. And this is one of the problems that you might encounter. Every file you open, once it's open in Python, you really cannot be able to do anything with it until you close it. Okay, so we're going to close this file, all right? But we can't just say close, okay? Because if you notice, the system is not changing to this green to show you that it's a built-in function in Python. And I don't know why the writers of Python did it that We can only open, but we can't close from here. So how do we now close this file? You know, since we can only use open, but we can't use close. If we want to close this file, we will have to assign a variable name to this thing we just did now, this file we just created here. So let's just call this my PyXLS, all right? And assign it to this variable here, all right? So then we can now, the moment we assign it to this variable here, okay, does anyone have a question?
Yeah.
I notice, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm saying, what if we don't create the variable name, but we just append dot close at the back? Will it
At
work?
the back, yes,
Yes.
it will close, it will close. But it will make your code very clumsy because
Yes,
anybody that looks
not-
at your file will just be, okay, you just said dot open now and you're saying dot close. You understand? So if I put dot close here, it will close, it will work obviously. All right. But then I like using this method because it makes everything that I'm doing very clear. So I can now call this my PyXLS, all right, dots. You'll now see that all the file methods are available to it. Why? Because it's now, the system recognizes that as a file object. So because the system recognizes as a file object, it makes available all the file methods that, including close and all of that. So what I want is this one, close, and then I'm going to run it. So now I can go back to my 2014 file and now open it. And it will not tell me the system and the file is open in Python, all right? So again, this is just, sorry, this is a problem with Excel and Python sometimes. You need to make sure you are writing the right file extension, okay? So, and that's what I did not write the correct file extension. But let me just not worry about that right now. So let me just delete this. It's open in Python. Okay, so let me close this. Let me run that close, all right, and delete it. Okay, so I will run, instead of this now, I'm just going to change this to TXT so that we'll use a notepad from a notepad document, all right? So when I run this, if I go to my 2014 folder, you see I have a notepad document right now, and it's straightforward. It's not looking for any stress. So I'm just going to close that. Then the next thing I probably want to do is I probably want to write some stuff to the file. Again, as part of automation, like I said, you might want to go to a website like maybe CNN News or bbcnews.com, download all the headlines, and then send the headlines to maybe a notepad document or a Word document or something, all right? So if you want to do stuff like that, you need this write method for the file that you just created, okay? So that's why we have this. So I've used this open method again, but then right now, because this file is existing, I have used A, which means to append. Like I said, if you check the docstring of this file open method, you would see all the various methods that are available. All right. R means read only. A means to append. Okay, so let me do this and then it will become clear what the difference is. So let me just run this line because I have my directory here, which is this new auto 2014 mypy.txt. And what I want to write is this: when we get to Walmart, we'll buy Oreos. All right, so that's what I want to buy. Remember, when you look at that notepad, there's nothing on the inside, it's blank. All right, so you just watch what happens when I run this. Okay, so let me just go to my notepad and open it. So do you see When we get to Walmart, we'll buy Oreos. All right, so it just writes what I put there into that place. So what if I decide to say, okay, let's append. So let me append another one again. Let me do another file dot write. I could just f dot write. Okay, we are coming home from Walmart. All right, now let me run this and let's see what it does. So you can see when we get to Walmart, we'll buy Oreos. This was the first time we ran it. Next time when I ran it, it did it again. When we get to Walmart, we'll buy Oreos. Then we are coming home from Walmart. Naturally, you might not want your, this might not be what you want, you know, your documents to look like when you type it. So, so I'm just going to come to this place now and do some amendments, okay? So let's do some amendments to this stuff. The first amendment that we'll do is that here we'll put a breaking line, all right? So we'll do this. This N means that we want to break the line, all right? So we would have this here. When we get to Walmart, we'll buy Oreos, and then we are coming home from Walmart to show that we want it on another line. So let me run this right now, and then let's look at our notepad and see how it looks. Great. So when we get to Walmart, we'll buy Oreos, and we're coming home from Walmart, all right? So that's how you append, you know, you use this A methods to append the file and then include. And please do not forget to, if you want to, it's not compulsory, you can leave your current directory where it is. But me, I like to change my directory back to where the original installation is, all right, of my notebook or my Spider or whatever Visual Studio Code or whatever IDE you're using. So when I run this change directory, I'm just trying to change it back to this original directory it was when I started the work here. All right, so I'm just going to run this and yep. So if I use this os.get current working directory here right now, what is going to give me is C users ogle. So we're back to where we came from. All right. So these are all the methods that we use, and these are all the methods that we use in our files. So you could just play around with them. You could play around with things like close, which we have done, read line, read lines, write lines. You can play with all of them. All right. But sometimes, in order to avoid overwriting a file in error, because maybe like a file is already existing and you don't want to overwrite it, you might want to check first if the file exists. So if that file exists, then you might want to do something. Maybe you want to return a value or something, or you might want to just skip, just pass. In that case, what you want to do is this. You want to check whether that file exists. So the method that you use is this os.path, and you want to check whether there is a file there. Thankfully, in Python, whenever there is a Boolean condition that is a built-in method, it usually starts from is. So is file, is instance, is, you know, so once you just see a method or whatever stands from is, just know that when you evaluate it, it will give you true or false, all right? So it's a Boolean condition. So in this case, when I use this os.path is file, I'm trying to find out whether there is a file in this directory with this name, my py.txt. And when I run it, it tells me true, that there's a file like that, all right? So in this case now, I can now decide, you know what, I want to write, you know, on that file. So if I do this, I run this, you will notice that it will go to that, it will go to, let me just open it back. Okay, so in this case, what I did was I created a new file called your pie. All right. So that's why when you look at this place, you see a notepad that has been created, your pie. And what is inside is there's a party at the house tomorrow. We need some cakes. All right. So that's what I have asked to be written inside of that your pie file. All right. And close as usual. So if I want to evaluate whether a file is existing, all right, I can use this an if statement, just a simple if statement to say if os.path.isFile, which is this one here, is true, that is this double equals to true, just to say, okay, if this thing evaluates to true, what should you do? Print file that already exists. But if not, what should you do? Make a new directory and create that file if it's not existing. That's what I just said with this statement here. So when I just run that, it tells me file already exists. Okay. But if I delete that file, that's my py file. This one, if I just delete it and ask it to run, you see, it didn't give me that file already exists. It will now go create that my py.txt. Why did it create it as a folder? No, it's not supposed to be a folder. It's actually supposed to be it's actually supposed to be a text. Where is it? My py.txt. Okay. Oh, I see, because I used make theirs. All right, so that's why it's created it as a folder, as a subfolder, all right, inside the folder. Okay, so now you might want to rename a particular file or directory. Okay, so let me just bring back that my py. Let me delete this. Okay. Okay, let me change this file name and okay. You know what? I probably will just run this code again so that it will create that my py for me. All right, so let me just run that. Where is that code? Okay, so let me run this one so that it creates my py for me again. Okay, great. No, not great. It didn't create it yet. Just a second. Okay, this is your py. Okay, let me create my py. So if I want to create my py now, this code will have to change. So I will just add another line here. And instead of os.make theirs, I'm going to change this to open. All right, so open this, yeah, it should run now. There is no such file as my py.txt, and the reason is because, let's see, just a second, I'm just going to py auto new 2014 my py.txt. Okay, sorry, I didn't specify the type, so let me specify it as right. Okay, great, so it will work now. Okay, so yeah, so there it is, my py.txt, so we're good. All right, so this is what I want to do now. So there's an old file, which is this my py.pxt right now. All right. And let's say I want to create a new file called your py, or let me just call this your py 311. All right. Since there is already a your py there, and let me not use 311, let me call it your py. All right. So what I want to do is I want to rename the file here. All right. So that this one's name will be changed from my py to your py, since we already have a your py in this folder. All right. So all I do is I put the name the file path and assign it to a name called old file. I create the new path that I want, assign it to a name new file, and then use this os.rename method. All right. When you look at the doc string of this os.rename, you'll see that the thing is asking for first is the source, that's src. The second is the destination, that's DST. And then this other one's default to none. So, and it's good, so it's fine for us. All right. So when I run this right now, this is what will happen if you take a look. So you notice that my py.txt earlier has now changed to your py.txt. All right. So that's what happens here. And I may want to, cut a file from one directory to another.
A question, please.
Go ahead, please.
Yeah. Would there still be the content inside your pipeline because there was something inside it before?
Yes.
I created a new.
Yes, everything remains the same. All that just changes is the name of the file. Right. That's just all what changes, the name of the file. Okay. So if I want to move this file now, your py, all right, from this py auto new, remember the folder is 2014, but I want to create a new folder called 2015 right now, all right? And then move that your py into this 2015. Remember, it's a cut operation that I want to do. I want to cut it from 2014 to 2015. I'm going to use this shutil.move. All right, like I said, the shutil module, what it does is high-level file operations, cut, copy, paste, and all those stuff. All right, so that's what I'm going to use here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first ask Python to create a directory for me called this 2015, and then I will now ask Python to move this file from this old path to new path. Okay, so when I run that, you'll see now that if you go to this place, there is no more your py, but then it's now in a folder called 2015, which is this your py. All right, so everything just moves. And the other model we'll just talk about briefly today is the sys model, because we really need to round off so that we can prepare for machine learning foundations, which is our next class that is coming up. Okay, so for the sys module, what does the sys module do? Basically, it just grants you access to everything about your Python installation. Okay, so first is if I want to check the platform where I'm running my Python, and I run this sys.platform, what it does is it tells me I'm running Win32. This Win32 is actually not Windows 32. This is actually the name given to the API. Windows API is a generic, whether it's Windows 32 or 64 bits, doesn't care. All right, that Win32 is the API name. Okay, so it's telling me that my Python is installed on Windows platform. All right. Now, there are some other things I may want to do. Like I said, I may want to run my program in such a way that whenever you finish running, just shut down Python. Instead of leaving Python running, just shut down Python. So when I finish writing my program code, I will add this sys.exit there. So if I run that sys.exit, what it does, it will shut down my Python. All right. If I do that now, it's going to shut down this Python that I'm working with. So I'm not going to run it. I'm just going to leave it commented out. Another thing you might want to do is you want to check for maybe the modules that are already installed in your Python. It's usually very crazy. If you run that sys.modules, to bring out all the modules is a very long list, all right, that are in your Python. So you see all your NumPy, your pandas, your everything, basically all the modules that are installed with your Python, so that you can copy them. Anyone, you can just copy them out, Control F, find, and pick the one you want to, maybe you're writing a program that will need to amend something in a particular module to be able to give you something. All right. So you can do that. You can also do system.path. That one would give you all the paths where your Python installation is done. All right. So like for me, my Python installation is an Anaconda installation. Like I told you, I love Anaconda. I love the snake. All right. So yeah, this is what I use. So it tells you where the installations are and everything that is related to this my Python installation, so that again, if I'm writing any code that I want to target any of these parts of the Python installation, I can just do that. And then for people that use Linux and Unix, you would know that there are a lot of things that you do. Like I said, I'm not a proficient Linux user, but there are a lot of Python, what do you call them now? Like if you check the documentation that's from Python, you'll see that there are a lot of things that are basically for Linux and Unix. All right. So you would know like this STD, that standard, all of this whole STD group are for Linux. Sorry, I'm scrolling too fast. Just take your eyes off the screen until I'm done. I'm so sorry. So where is that? sys.std. Okay, so I'm trying to get them now, but basically most of them are for Linux and Unix and other operating system users. Like I told you, if you're using Windows, you're fine, you're good to go. All right, you don't have any issues. But if you're using any of this, Linux, Unix, you do a lot of things manually, but it's not bad because I think it makes you a better programmer. I think that's what he told us. So this is where we're going to round off this session. We have covered the core 3 modules that help us, target files and directories. So by our next class, we'll do the watchdog and the SMTP live module. And if we have time, we'll probably touch the time and the date time module and see where that leads us, so that we can now start taking use cases, real life automation challenges as examples. But all of those will draw on how well your foundation is in all of this. We may also add 1 or 2 more, probably might add Scrapy and a couple of other alternative options, like there's Asyncio. That's another Python library for asynchronous programming. We might just look at it again, So if time permits us, we could just look at it. The beauty of it is that, like in Python, one of the things I've discovered is that there are some modules that are just repetition of the other. Maybe they just change one thing or the other just to enable the other parties use this module very well, or maybe customize it to their taste. But many modules are just repetitions. So you'll just note that, okay, for example, request and URL, like they're the same, but just that, okay, this one's syntax is different from this one, but they basically do the same thing. So that's it. So we probably will just look at a couple of other modules that are not here, and then you can just make your choice when you are building your automation solutions. All right, so thank you very much. This is where I'm going to stop so that I can take questions. And if there are no questions, I would just upload the recording of this stuff to our YouTube playlist, and we'll also upload to Slack the what do you call it now? The directory, directory, the Google Drive directory, where you can download that from. So go ahead, please. Go ahead if you have a question, please.
I don't have a question.
Okay, great. So Lawrence. Okay, thank you, Lawrence. I know that I have 2 people here that are not regulars. JDeep, I really do not know you, but I will really be glad if you can unmute yourself and introduce yourself to the class. Same for Tima Witty Swiffy. Okay, so please just unmute yourself and introduce yourself to the class if you will. All right. So who wants to go first? JDeep or Tima? Okay, thank you, Aziz. All right, Tima, go ahead. Hello.
Um, my name is Tima Luiti Swifi.
Okay.
Thanks for welcoming me to this platform. Like, I'm really looking forward to join Python programming language.
Okay.
But see, I've been reading some books and all that. But it's as it is, I joined the lesson a bit late because of my work.
Okay.
I don't like to, I'm a bit confused.
Okay, no problems. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you the link because when we started this class, we started from what is Python. That was in July, all right? So we started from what is Python. You know, what is Python? Python is a language and stuff like that. So I'm just going to give you the YouTube link to watch all of those and try to catch up, you know, with all of that. Okay. So yeah. So that's what we'll do. Sorry about it, Tima. All right, great. So JDip, please, would you want to introduce yourself? JDip. Okay. Okay, I think JDip is microphone shy. Or maybe he's going to talk right now, or she or they. Okay, so JDip is not saying anything to us.
Maybe sometimes maybe he got off the chair.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, let's take it back.
All right then. All right, no problems. Okay, so in the absence of any questions, I would just say you guys to take care of yourself. And please, if you're not on the Slack, just signify by raising your hand so that I could send you an invite. Okay, what will you do if you're not on the Slack? Before you log out, just drop your email on the chat. I'm going to extract it from the chat, and then I'm going to send you an invite to our Slack group so that you can join the Introduction to Python group. And yeah, we'll give you every information. Okay, great. So I see one name. Oh, Lawrence. Lawrence is trying to unmute. Lawrence, I really wish I can unmute you, but okay. So great. Go ahead, Lawrence.
Oh, thank you very much.
Right.
It should be the one that I chatted up for the program, right?
Yes. I'm the one.
I'll be looking forward to meet you anyway. And first, let me appreciate Dr. Ives now. Is that correct?
Yes.
I'm Lawrence by name, and I'm really pleased to be here. It was my search for inquiries and for more opportunities in data analytics and machine learning that I got here. I got it through Dr. Ives, and I feel I'm home anyway. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for taking your time to touch through some basics of automation. In fact, as I speak to you currently, I don't know if this apply to what we're doing. I have a project that I'm currently working on.
Okay.
I'm currently active in the academic space anyway.
Okay.
So the data I got from the company is an Excel sheet. I got the Excel sheet from them, and I need to extract some particular rows.
Okay.
So another Excel that I can use for my analysis.
Okay.
So first, I don't know if that is applicable to what we are doing here, because from what some of the modules we are going to touch, you mentioned automation. I mean, what is it called? The aspect of Watchdog.
Okay.
The Watchdog module. I do not know if that will be applicable to that.
Okay, no, what we will do is, in your own case, since you already have an Excel file and you already know the format and you want to just extract one function from the other, what I'm going to do if I were in your shoes is I'm going to use this module called Pandas.